What is the most terrifying thing you've ever experienced while home alone? A couple years back, I woke up at 3 a.m. to see someone walk past my bedroom door. I called out in my just woken up, not thinking haze, thinking maybe my boyfriend had come over while I was sleeping but got no response, so knew it wasn't him. Got out of bed, stupidly forgetting to take my phone or any kind of defensive item with me, and went into the front room where the light was on to be met with a random guy staring at one of the walls. I asked him who he was and got no answer. At this point, I'd actually woken up enough to realize I could really be in trouble, so ran back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and ran outside on the phone to the police, who showed up within a few minutes. Turns out the guy was mentally ill, and to this day, neither myself or the police know how he got in. A couple years back, I woke up at 3 a.m. to see someone walk past my bedroom door. I called out in my just woken up, not thinking haze, thinking maybe my boyfriend had come over while I was sleeping but got no response, so knew it wasn't him. Got out of bed, stupidly forgetting to take my phone or any kind of defensive item with me, and went into the front room where the light was on to be met with a random guy staring at one of the walls. I asked him who he was and got no answer. At this point, I'd actually woken up enough to realize I could really be in trouble, so ran back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and ran outside on the phone to the police, who showed up within a few minutes. Turns out the guy was mentally ill, and to this day, neither myself or the police know how he got in. One day, while I was working afternoons a couple years back, I woke up at around 10 a.m. and started to watch American Dad before getting up. Next thing you know, I hear my back door open. A normal thing in our home since we only use the back door, but no one was supposed to be home yet. I assumed it was my mom and didn't think anything of it. Then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs as my bedroom was on the second floor. I call out to my mom and get no response. Then my door cracks open and a head pops in. It's a 30-ish-year-old man with a blonde beard and a big mane of greasy hair who looks shocked to see me. At the time, I was about 260 pounds, 6 feet 3 inches, and 20 years old. I was also sitting in only my boxers. Before I was able to realize what was happening, he asked, "Is this the Yibachalos residence?" To which I replied, "No." He makes a swift exit, and before I can recollect my thoughts, he's not even in my driveway. Talked to a family friend who is a veteran police officer. Turns out a man has been pulling this kind of stunt to rob people in nearby towns. I was babysitting a kid who had a video monitor and was told that she wouldn't wake up while the parents were out, and if she did, to call them right away. I was watching TV with the monitor set off to the side to keep an eye on her, and right around 11, the camera's view shifted a few inches. It then began to slightly jiggle like someone was messing with it. I was squinting at it, trying to decide what I was actually seeing, and I kid you not, the whole screen burst to static for a few seconds, and the kid started wailing. She stood up and was screaming in her crib just like one of the kids from The Sims. When she didn't fall back asleep after a few minutes, I called Mom and she said, "Okay, we're on our way home anyway. We think she has nightmares sometimes, it's fine. Never again." I was about 21 or 22 and living by myself at the time, and I left my window open on a pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you really tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off, and I lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. Woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp, and my hand hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man in my bedroom, smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me, because he leapt out my window and took off. I slammed it shut and moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, found the screen sitting against the house. Didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with a window more than cracked ever since. I also absolutely refuse to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or rape me or both, but it was absolutely terrifying and makes me wonder how many times it happened and I didn't wake up. When I was 19 in my first apartment, I had someone knock at the door. I looked through the peephole and saw this burly, heavy-set man who abruptly started screaming to let him in. He was screaming things like he was gonna beat my ass and kick the door down if I didn't open. I called the cops, and as soon as someone got on the phone, he started body slamming my door to break in. I was freaking out and crying as they quickly had 5 cops show up within 5+ minutes. As soon as he heard the sirens, he quickly walked away and they met him at the bottom of the stairs. Apparently, he was after the previous renter but was extremely intoxicated. They arrested him and thankfully he never came back. I ended up breaking my lease and moving out 3 months later. It was in a very nice neighborhood, but it quickly made me wish I was back home with family instead of being on the other side of the United States. I've been pretty fortunate based on these comments, but I was home alone one night while my wife and son were visiting my MIL. I walked back to our bedroom to see someone rummaging through my son's room on the video baby monitor. Immediately grabbed my firearm and yelled to the other side of the house, "I am armed, come out slowly," over and over while slowly making my way back to his room. Got there, flipped on the light, and nothing. Searched the whole house, pumped full of adrenaline. Finally satisfied I was alone, I went back to my room and the guy was back in the room. I took a closer look and I am ashamed to say I was looking at myself. The camera is a live feed on our Wi-Fi and it was steaming on a huge delay. I have never known it to do that and it has not done it since. My boyfriend worked away from home a lot and I always struggled to sleep on the first night he was away. On this occasion, I was woken by the sound of a man shouting and then someone banging on wood or a front door. I jumped up and looked out my bedroom window, just in time to see a man dressed all in black walking through our garden towards the house. I ran to the front of the house to look out of the front window and make sure he kept going. He did, but he met up with another man dressed in black walking towards my house. I was terrified and called the police. They arrived in a matter of minutes and checked out the back garden, but they were gone. Turned out a neighbor had caught them both trying to steal his car and one had escaped through the gardens while the other had run through the roads and they had met up outside my house. I didn't sleep at all that night and my brother came to stay the next night. I'm so glad I live in an apartment now, much more security. The cleaning lady tried to commit suicide in our bathroom. She died 4 days later. When I was like 14, I was home alone one night around 10 p.m., stood in my kitchen making some cereal. It's dark outside and then all of a sudden the loudest sound. Some drunk woman literally launched a hammer through my kitchen window. Was so loud and glass was everywhere. I followed her down the street whilst calling the police. Pretty strange. When I was young, I came home from a party in the middle of the night when my dad were out of town. I started making a midnight quesadilla when I heard someone cough in the basement. I yelled and ran outside and they took off through the backyard. Come to find out, my dad's ex-GFS daughter stole her key to our house and came to rob us. She was busted a couple years later doing this to her SIL. I lit 2 long taper candles for some ambiance while I was playing guitar late at night. I was facing the other direction looking out the window while playing, and shortly later turned around and went back towards the candles and discovered one of them was completely gone. The stand was still there, but no melted wax, just a bare candle holder, and the other one was still lit, and no shorter than it was when I lit them. It was almost 3 a.m. and I was so terrified that I got in my car and left and drove to my dad's house. Somebody tried to break into the house while I was by myself. The whole place was quiet and dark at nighttime. I walked past the front door to go upstairs for bed, and the handle suddenly started jerking around like the Hulk was trying to get in. Then whoever it was started to either kick or shoulder the door, and it was making the whole frame jiggle. I completely froze and my mind went blank, just standing there like an idiot and staring. My dog bolted down the stairs like it was her time to shine, scrambled on the tile, and let loose the most vicious barks I've ever heard. Whoever it was left. She was a very good girl. I miss her. You know those tongs in the kitchen that have a spring but a latch to keep them together? I had a pair of those and I put the latch on and put them down on the counter. I went away for a bit and came back and then they jumped off the counter at me. Biggest jump scare of my life. The latch had come undone and they sprung open, but in the millisecond when inanimate objects suddenly come to life and jump at you, you don't realize this and totally freak out. One afternoon, someone knocked at my back door. I thought it was the guy coming to read our meter, so I opened the door. Next thing I know, two huge guys pushed into the house, and one of them threw me up against the wall. Then they shoved me down on the couch. They told me they were Hell's Angels, and they were pissed because my boyfriend was selling too much drugs, cutting into their profits. They kept calling me by my next-door neighbor's name. We had suspected they were selling drugs. All of the people stopping by for less than 5 minutes made it pretty obvious. I just kept telling them I wasn't her. One of them searched the house while the other kept me pinned to the couch. They started to realize they were in the wrong house because they couldn't find anything where they were told it was. My neighbor's house is a single floor with a basement. My house is a 4-level backsplit. Then I showed them my mail because it showed my name and they knew they fucked up. They started telling me that they were after my neighbor's BF because he raped their cousin, which I knew was BS, but I didn't care. I just wanted them to leave. They robbed me of my cash and left. I now have locks on my screen doors. Not exactly alone. But I was home with my newborn son and someone knocked on the front door. I was expecting my mother, but she usually comes in through the garage. I thought it was strange, but yelled, "Come in," because why wouldn't I? Then this cracked-out old woman comes stumbling through the door and asked me for a ride to the nearest gas station. I told her I didn't have a car seat for my son, so I couldn't go anywhere. So she starts screaming, "That's just inappropriate," and doesn't stop even when I'm telling her she needs to leave or I'll call the cops. After a minute or so, my mother actually pulls in the driveway, the crackhead sees the car and bolts back out the door, and I never see her again. That night, my truck got broken into. Can't for sure say it was the same woman, but I have her description to the cops anyway. I was asleep at home alone. When I turned over in bed, I casually opened my eyes a little whilst turning, and they were shut again just as quickly. In that split second, I could have sworn I had seen a man stood at the bottom of my bed. I laid still, awake with my eyes closed, trying not to act like I was awake and trying to listen for any sound in the room of someone breathing or moving. Couldn't hear anything. I was too scared to open my eyes and look, consoled myself that there wasn't any way someone could have gotten in without me hearing a window smash and fell back asleep. When I got up in the morning, though, the front door was open. They didn't take anything and left no signs of being there. Was still very, very creepy, though.